So let's get started with what is serverless. So serverless is a means to develop cloud-native applications or solutions that run on servers that are fully managed by the cloud provider instead of yourself. So the term serverless is a bit of a misnomer. There's definitely servers involved in this process, but it refers to the fact that your team isn't managing these servers. They don't even have access to these servers. They're fully managed entirely by the cloud provider, including the operating system, the software, and many other aspects that go around it, including, to some degree, scaling, redundancy, backups, and security. So these are now all more in the domain being managed by the cloud provider instead of your team. So this means that the team can focus on those aspects that are going to give you your return on investment, the ROI. They're focused on configuring these cloud services, which is not to be underestimated. A lot of recent hacks are being because of misconfiguration, so this is very important. And they'll be focusing on the application code itself. So not so much on all the plumbing and everything else. So just now I mentioned the term cloud native. Cloud native just means that a solution or application has been developed for the cloud, as opposed to a solution that might have been developed for an internal data center and maybe moved to the cloud later on. Cloud native doesn't necessarily mean that it's serverless. It can be developed based on servers in the cloud. So I tend to talk about serverless and not cloud native because it's a bit more ambiguous. True serverless or pure serverless or fully serverless, these are all terms that you might have heard as well. And these just refer to the fact that besides the service being fully managed, so that is a very basic requirement, it's fully managed, including the operating system, the software, by the cloud provider. Besides that, it is also only billed based on actual usage. That means that with a true or fully serverless cloud service, you should never be paying for idle time, time that it's running, but nobody's using it, but then you still have to pay for it. So servers are a clear example of that. Let's give that some context with 3 examples, right? Let's say you want to host a website or a web application in the cloud. You've got 3 options to do so. You can traditionally put it on a server, which you would lease from the cloud provider, and you pay a monthly amount for this server, regardless of how much it's being used. So if you have 1 user or 1,000 users that the server can support, you'd pay the same amount at the end of the month. And while the cloud provider is responsible for the network and the infrastructure around that server, you're responsible for picking the operating system, making sure it's configured, hardened, maintained, the software and everything that runs on that, and then your application code. So that's option 1. Option 2 would be that you can use a service that the cloud provider provides that is fully managed. So you're no longer needing to deal with the operating system or the software. You just deploy your code and configure it correctly, and it works. But you're still paying a fixed monthly amount regardless of usage. So certain databases and certain containers work this way. So there are services in the cloud that work. You pay a monthly amount and you get to use it, but you don't have to really manage all the operational overhead with it. So this is fully managed. And the third way is serverless. So with serverless, it's fully managed as well, but you're only paying for the actual requests or the time that something is running in response to a request. So there's no idle time anymore. Now, let's take as an example a registration form. Let's say you want to have some kind of sign-up form out there on the internet, and you'd use that in one of these 3 options. So if you put it on the server, let's say you've got 4 users filling out this form, and each time they fill it out, it takes 5 seconds to process it. So per day, you would have 20 seconds of it actually doing something. In the server-based option, you would be paying 23 hours, 59 minutes and 40 seconds to have that form online, while it's only being used 20 seconds of it. And you have the maintenance overhead of having to manage the operating system, the software, everything else. So it's quite a sizable cost just to get one form onto the internet. For the second option, it would be fully managed, so you have much less maintenance and overhead, so you can just deploy your form and get it online. But you would still be paying all that excess time, that 23 hours, 59 minutes. You'd still have to pay for that, just for that 20 seconds of processing time. Now with a serverless solution, you're only paying for that 20 seconds. So it's 20 seconds it's being used, that's 20 seconds you're paying for it. Plus maybe some storage, some data transfer, and the usual overheads that apply to all 3 of those. So that's really the key difference here. We're paying only for what we're using. It is fully managed, so you can focus on your ROI, your code, your configuration. That is serverless. Now for me, besides explaining what it is, I also like to explain what it is not, right? It's not the end all. It's not serverless is going to go and replace every other way of doing things that there are out there. It's a very powerful tool, but like any tool, you need to pick the right tool for the job. And there are projects and there are companies for which serverless would not be suitable. So we should always assess the project, assess the short and the long-term requirements, and base the technology decisions of that. And not just go with something because it's a buzzword or the latest thing.